Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Thank you. You can sit down, but I'd ask that we sing. I didn't see many people singing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to stand again to say a word of prayer. It's a Friday. And I'm going to ask our Director, Internal Audit, to lead us in a word of prayer.
Let us pray. Loving Father God, we bless you this morning. We thank you for our lives. We thank you for the opportunity you give us to serve our respective entities and serve our country. And we thank you for the opportunity you've given us to come here, meet, and discuss matters that are important to us as individuals and to us as organizations. We pray for everybody who will be presenting. You bless them, give them insights, and have them give us information that is beneficial to us. May all the glory, the praise, and the honor be to you.
Audit, there's a reason why you are chosen. For the reasons that we're here, I think you're the best person for that, to give us the word of prayer that will take us through the day. We're supposed to have introductions, which I had already requested that you all make sure you know who is here. I've already tried to introduce who is here. And I want to ask that everyone who is given a chance to speak on behalf of the organization, please let us know who is here. Since I'm already standing up for UNRA, we have the Executive Director, Mrs. Allen Kajina. We also have directors, one director who sits on the top management team, Mr. Moses Kasacha is sitting right in front here. We have senior management members. Please raise your hand or stand up of UNRA. There's quite a number of them here. And then we have project managers and project engineers, those who are working on projects. Please show your hand. Good. So that is what we have. Any other category? Everybody else falls within the UNRA workforce. So, and that includes me. I'm not among any of these. So we have contractors, we have consultants. So I want to ask contractors, please raise your hands. So I think we all know there is quite a good number here, well, good representation. Consultants? Very good. I recognize a few faces here. Okay, so any other category? So you've seen where the contractors are sitting. You've seen where UNRA senior management is sitting. Feel free at a good time to chat with them and direct your questions to them when that time comes. So ladies and gentlemen, I now would like to invite the Managing Director, National Social Security Fund, to give us his opening remarks.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, I thought they hadn't served any breakfast. It's good to know. In the clicker, so we can do that. Clicker. Meanwhile, let me do this. I think I really want to appreciate Mrs. Allen Kagina. She's a little under the weather. She didn't know she would make it now, but she took the time to come, and I really do appreciate you. Let me, or reconstruction, both create dust. I say you have to ask yourself in Uganda, when you see dust, don't stop at the dust. Go behind the dust. What's causing that dust? Is it decay or reconstruction? So recently I went to Fort Portal. I was using that road to Fort Portal, somewhere between Mitiana and Mubende. There was dust, serious dust. But behind it, I saw UNRA. And I said, there's hope for this country, as long as the dust we are creating is for reconstruction. And I really want to appreciate all of you are here. One thing I want to kind of, as I start, really let go. A lot of people use the word pay your NSSF. No, it's a wrong terminology. It equates us with the institution that Alan used to lead, called URA. URA you pay, NSSF you save. So the thing is, save with NSSF. The reason why that's important, then when you ask your question, suppose you have a houseboy or a house girl, should they save with NSSF? I think it becomes a very obvious question. If you've got a team of people who are working, they cut the grass, should they save with NSSF? I think the answer is obvious, yes. If you are here and you've not been saving them, should you be saving with NSSF? I think it is. Yes, you should. Because it's your money. We keep it for a while and then we give it back to you. So it's not paying. It's actually saving with the fund. And it's important that we get those differentiation. I know we are running a bit out of time, so I'm going to go quickly through what I want to share with you. I want to kind of lift you a bit to think about the national responsibilities we have as a group. Now, if I can have this to work, it would be good. Is it working? Good. The first thing I'm going to do is let me introduce you to my Uganda. The reason why that's important is, well, is it working? And I'm saying, first, let me welcome you to my Uganda. Now, you may wonder, you're Ugandan, I'm a Ugandan, but sometimes Ugandans, we see so much the dust, we don't see the other side of Uganda. This is my Uganda. So take a look as I take you through this journey. Okay, my friend, you are going to have to help me move it. Just one. Okay, good. Good. Many of you who may not know where Uganda is, geographically, it's in the center of Africa. I could give you the coordinates for it, but I won't. And there are some of the points for Uganda. Many of you are obvious. You take this. One of the most interesting things is most people do not know that the national language is Swahili. Many of you still think it's Luganda. It is Swahili. And you don't know that the official language is English. I know some of you think it is Japadola. I'm from there. No, it's English. And I don't know what the census is going to say how strong we are, how we are. But at this point, we're always estimating we're 45 million. We'll figure out later. Interesting, I've not been counted. I waited, they didn't count me. But I hear they've done 99%. Now, I have no idea. I think they'll extrapolate me into the numbers. But I wanted to show you just a bit about this country called Uganda. Churchill dubbed it the Pearl of Africa. That's Chobe. If you know the 2024 Brad Guide, it says the #1 tourist destination in Africa, the 4th in the world. Switzerland is considered #1. That's my Uganda. In fact, we sell sometimes the wrong thing. It's not animals and gorillas. Look at the incredible weather. There's an American who came, had his child. He came around, before COVID, around 2017. Spent 1 week here, went to Bwindi, looked at the gorillas, came back. The next year, he brought back his daughter. The daughter was asthmatic. And he noticed that after 2 weeks, the daughter actually was feeling better. Came back with the daughter the other year. Then COVID hit. They came back in 2021. This time with 6 people. They even did not leave Kampala. They just stayed at the Serena. So the 2 weeks they were with the daughter was therapy for them. They healed. Sometimes we are marketing gorillas. No. Our weather is actually an amazing thing. Where else do you find hot and dry, hot and wet? That's it. There's no winter, no whatever spring. BuzzFeed in 23 named the 13th most beautiful country in the world. I disagree. No, we're not number 13. I think we're number 1. They just got it wrong. But we can't be no more than 2. But either way, they said we're number 13 in the world. We are the home of Victoria, the largest lake in Africa. Of course, the mountain gorillas, the largest number in the world, though sometimes Rwanda claims that they have more gorillas when we know that they just went to eat there and they came back. The longest river in the world, birdwatchers' paradise, tree climbing lions, Rwenzori, the 3rd highest mountain in Africa, snow at the equator. A contradiction. You're not supposed to have snow at the equator, but we have it in Uganda. We the people love to work hard, to pray earnestly. You go to Namugongo today, you'll find that. To honor our traditions, to enjoy a fresh, unique cuisine. If you've not tried the Luwombo, please do. It's just unique to Uganda. To create champions in all we do. If you're from Kenya, you can see they are behind. We just left you. If you're from the rest of Africa, like Ethiopia, South Africa, you didn't even make it around the corner. You're still back there. And to dance like there is no tomorrow. You can get to across Africa or Uganda conveniently. You can fly. I think UNRA should be very proud of this. This is Entebbe Kampala Expressway. You can go to the islands on Vanessa. You can just enjoy the walk. You can get on a boda. Or if you really like to do it, you can ride your bicycle and wave to the people. And if you choose to stay, you can choose to stay at the Serena, Mburara in Barara, or just get a simple African hut or go camping. Because, my friends, that's a glimpse of my awesome Uganda. And in the middle of it is your fund called NSSF. So with that, when guys tell you, and you go look at Uganda, don't stop at the dust. Oh yeah, we know we have potholes. We do. We know we have a mess with the borders. But sometimes the most amazing thing with borders, you will see 4 people sitting on a border. And in your heart, you're saying, what's wrong with you people? You have an accident. And all of them are smiling. And you say, please, people, what's up with you? That's my country. So I want to kind of raise something for you and talk to you about savings. And I want to take more like from your responsibility. There is where we have the personal. It's good for you at a personal level. You're going to hear about that a lot. Over the last few months, one of the most interesting things, at the end of June 2023, the size of the fund was 18.6 trillion shillings. This last just 9 months now, actually 10 months as we are talking now, we've grown to around 21.3 trillion shillings. That's a growth of almost 3 trillion shillings that has come from you, that has come from the people who save, just little people saving little amount of money. The average savings among our guys is like 150 to 200,000 shillings, the average. I know for project managers, you CEOs who are here, it's much more. But the average is that amount, and people save faithfully each year, and it's helping us build a domestic long-term savings for this country. Why is that important? At a high level, you're operating in an environment. You will thrive as a business in an economy that thrives. Unless, of course, you enjoy thriving in chaos. There are guys who just like chaos. Doesn't matter what you do, they'll try to thrive. But I'm saying you're an honest business person. You run an honest business entity. You will thrive when the economy, the environment in which you're operating in thrives. And that's where we step in now as a fund. And I'm going to use certain examples that we want to do, and why we must all save. And I take it from Vietnam. Sorry. If you look at Vietnam, and you remove the word Vietnam and put Uganda, Vietnam describes Uganda exactly. The history, it was an agrarian society. So are we. Emerged from devastating wars, so did we. The major exporter is coffee. So are we. Yes, number 4, we can debate that, revolutionary leadership. I know many of you will say, Patrick, you must be telling us a story. Okay, I'm going to say this. A man believes that with the 27 guns, I can overthrow a government, and goes ahead and does it within 5 years. Argue as much as you want. He is revolutionary. Challenge me on that. So yes, we do. Gifted in natural resources. Now, that's not debate. So you could pretty much take Vietnam, slap Uganda on it, and say we have the same history. After the war, they undertook reforms. Look at what they did. Liberalized the economy. So did we. We looked to attract FDI. So do we. We have policies on value addition, industrialization, export-led growth, among the things. Similar policy interventions that we started. But except, interestingly enough, look at Vietnam. In 1989, the GDP of Vietnam was $8 billion US. By the way, the GDP in 1989 of Uganda was around $4 billion. They started their reforms in 1989. We started ours in 1997. They have a 7-year jump on us. 1996, actually, that's when we did our reforms. If you look at Vietnam's GDP today, it is $550 billion. Ours, we don't know whether we are 50 or we are 52. So when the president says we should be a $500 billion economy, he's not pulling that number out of the air. There's actually history behind it. Why is that Vietnam, over almost the same span of time, grew to almost 10 times the GDP of Uganda? And yet we have the same history and had the same policy interventions. They did a lot of things. I'm just going to mention 2. How did Vietnam get there? State intervention in agriculture. And the reason why that's important for us, it doesn't concern you, but says if we want to begin to fix Uganda economy, we kind of have to look at certain things. 1996, in our structural adjustment that was imposed on us by the World Bank, we got out of everything. The state got out of everything. So we turned the economy to the private sector. Excuse me, the private sector is me. I am poor, I am broke, I'm selfish, I'm short-term, I'm needy. So we turned the whole economy to us. Selfish, greedy, poor, short-term thinking people. And the result is exactly what we saw. The good news is if you look at NDP3, the state finally realized, you can't get out of everything. So when you read the NDP3, there's no way they bring the state to intervene back into some areas that the state should not have got out of. And Vietnam organized their agriculture, organized their coffee. Today what you have in the country is amazing thing. If you look at nuts, if you look at OWC, if you look at PDM, there's an underlying economic assumption we've made as a country because nuts was supposed to help the farmers, give them quality seeds, give them affordable financing, give them fertilizers. So did OWC. By then now it's also PDM, they need affordable housing, affordable financing. The underlying assumption is if you fix the supply side of agriculture, you'll fix agriculture. What we've not learned is the farmers actually listen to us and they hear and they grow. The last maize season, planting season, the harvest just took place now in March. The last growing season for agriculture, which was I think in September, the price of maize was 1,000 shillings a kilo. They harvested. The price of maize is 300 shillings. So the problem is not the supply side because the farmer asks, where am I going to sell this damn thing I've grown? And we don't have an answer for the farmer as a country. One of the things we are going to do as NSSF later on, we are intervening in that area to try to create that marketplace for the farmer. So we can be certainty when they're growing. And in the process, they'll make a little more money. And as they make a little more money, they will save with the fund. But I want to really talk about the second part, domestic savings. The impact of savings allowed Vietnam to invest significantly in its infrastructure. In fact, one of the things that you want to think about is, if I go to the next slide, I want you to look at the gray bars. The gray bars basically your GDP per capita. And as you can see from 1989, their GDP per capita was around $700. If you look at their GDP per capita now, in 2021, that number had gone to about $3,000. And if you look at the gray line is their savings rate compared to GDP. As they saved more and more, they're able to tap into that long-term domestic savings to drive their own economic agenda of the country. And as you see it growing, in 1989, the savings rate was around just under 10%. It's around 10% of GDP. Right now, it's hovering around 35% of GDP. These are the stats. All the countries that became what we call the Asian tigers, whether it was Vietnam now, South Korea, China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, they became Asian tigers, but they began the journey being Asian tigers when their long-term domestic savings were at least 25% of GDP. And they're able to have a pool of long-term domestic savings to begin doing their own development agenda without relying 100% on the donor partners. We know that. You know how dangerous that is. So we pass a law that we think in Uganda is good for us. LGBT, stay there. Suddenly all the donors, we cannot, they ban it, no new funding, and we all panic. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We are still reaping the effect of that. But if we had our long-term domestic savings to the amazing, I was just talking to Alan here. One of the things we're going to do as NSF is, next week there's a meeting, how can we participate in the Kampala-Jinja Expressway? So at least as a local entity representing Ugandans, we have a skin in the game. And now we can help, so that when you're driving on that road, you know, it's your money that has built that road, not at a loss. So that all the profits that are being made are not leaving the country, but they stay within the country here, and you see it as a return on your savings. And we can do more and more of that if we create this pool of long-term savings that we have. So the appeal I want to make to you is, as you even think about this, you have a great, think about 10 years from now. Do you want this country stronger or weaker, so that your business can thrive? It becomes imperative then that it's important you help your workers, your employees, work and save. Because in growing and making this economy stronger, your business will thrive. Why is that important? Right now, the long-term domestic service of Uganda is only 11%. 11%, most of that is in NSF. So it even becomes for us now, as a fund, that we have to have this national outlook and responsibility. That if for NSSF to be stronger in 10 years' time, we better be seen to be contributing towards how this economy grows. Countries like China, countries like Taiwan, Singapore have used their long-term domestic savings to drive that development agenda. We can it too if we all save and help our workers save with the fund. In there, we begin to build this country. Because saving with NSF is good for you personally. Many of you, let me tell you, last year I'm going to tell you, you know, about 25 years ago, the lifespan of a Ugandan was 42 years. And NSSF, you had to get to 55 to get your money. There was a disconnect. Say, hey, wait a minute. The lifespan of a Ugandan is 42. You're telling me I can get my money at 55. It didn't make sense. The lifespan of Ugandan today, for women, 62. 64. For men, 62. We still have to figure out why women outlive us. Maybe it is that chama group you're with, the circle, you're the friends. You go and you can basically download on them what has happened with your husband, and you come back with whom you have. With us, we don't know how to download. Find a typical man, he will meet another man and say, hey, excuse me, how is home? When the man tells you, you know, mama, that's enough. With us, we download it. It means that there, I'm in the doghouse. Things are not good on there. But we keep a lot of things that we don't do as men. So what happens? The women are outliving us. But the point of it is, we are outliving the 55. The UN has what's called longevity, that beyond your life, actual lifespan, how long you again live. In Uganda, that number is 15. So imagine that after retirement at 55, you have an additional 15 years, you're 70. That's why if you go to your villages today, you're going to see more of your uncles who are above the age of 70 alive, 80 alive. They're living longer and longer. And for some of you, there are people saying, me, I can't wait. You know me, I'm going to die. I will die very quickly. Let me give you a statistic. Over the last 9 years, we've actually tracked it. Only 3% of the benefits we pay are paid to survivors. In other words, the members left. So if you think about checking out quickly that you won't get your money, I have news for you. You have a 97% chance you're still going to be around. So guys, make sure you prepare. But the point of it is, when we save, we are building this country, and we have to. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we could do better than that in applauding the previous speaker. What a way to break the ice. I don't want to let that warm, so I'll ask our executive director. Yeah, I didn't tell you, I'm a member of senior management, so I can invite her. So there's no need to call somebody else to call someone. So there you go, Mrs. Allen Kajina.
First of all, I want to know why the steps are this side when the podium is here, because walking across this stage with 300 eyes is a bit intimidating. MD, NSSF, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am very glad to be here. And I will not be here very long because some of you might catch this cold. So I will give some brief remarks and hope to catch up with what has taken place today. This is a really, really critical meeting. I almost missed it. But first of all, I have not seen contractors and consultants. It's in a very long time. I think we need our own meeting. And I'm sure most of you want to tell me how much money I have not paid so far. I am aware. And we shall pay that money. Government does not cheat its people. So before you tell me how much, I wanted to move very quickly to why I'm here. First of all, let me thank my brother and friend. Yes, we go way back, university days, and we are not young people, but I don't think we look too old either. I think we are trying. Because if you didn't lead them very well, I think our fund would be in trouble. So I follow closely because I am a contributor, both as an employer and as an individual. And I have seen the changes and I've seen the modernization that has taken place, and I really, really appreciate. You have very good staff because I interact with them. I will not name names here just in case others will begin to wonder why they were not named, but the few I've interacted with, even at a personal level, have done an excellent job, so thank you so much. Now, also, perhaps just as a follow-on point, I want to thank you that you do a job that perhaps is not easily appreciated, because none of us want to take of the little money that we have and put it aside. We want to use now. That's the culture of a third world country. You want to use what you have now. And so laws are put in place to actually force us to save, which is a strange thing. And I thank government for actually enforcing those laws, because if they didn't, there are some of us who've advanced in age who now appreciate that we were forced to save. as individuals and as employers. So thank you for doing that difficult job and growing a fund which is now so robust that we are considering partnering in big infrastructure projects. I want to thank our partners, the civil works contractors, the consultants, that we work together to connect Uganda. Our network is not very large. It's only 21,000 kilometers, but it is the most important, I think, 21,000 kilometers of the entire network of about 150,000 kilometers, including district roads, community roads, urban roads. This country, as you know, if you have traversed it, you know that we have moved significantly in meeting the economic infrastructure, road infrastructure needs of the country, the main ones, because we have about 6,000, I think 6,100 kilometers. And it is our partners who actually do this job. When I joined about 9 years ago, we talked of, I think, about 2,000 kilometers, maybe slightly higher than that, 2,000 something, I think close to 3,000. And even I, who traveled the country a lot, in my previous job and in the current job, I experienced difficulties in traversing this country. But I did, because I needed to be familiar with those who actually do the work. I met a lot of employers on the roads, the contractors, the consultants, and I met the workers who work with them. And one of the things that was indelible on my mind was the plight of our workers, the people we employ. And I know I had run in with a few companies who were not treating their workers well. I would invariably ask, do you even have a savings scheme for them? Because I knew the value of saving for your people. In UNRA, it is a retention scheme. We actually have another one, the retirement benefit scheme, because when you secure their future, your staff give you their present. If you don't secure their future, they will find a way of securing their future. And so there was nothing, in my opinion, as important as retaining good staff by motivating them with schemes like retirement savings. We all get sick. We pass on, or we might get disabled. What is the safety net when that happens? When things don't work out well, what is there to say, at least I have this amount of money saved somewhere? I can take my mother to hospital, I can go and can be off work for 3 months because I have something to keep me going. So it is things like that that allow us to keep our staff, our workers, working on the job. You know, when you think about it, those people, especially perhaps the not so high in management people, they are the real reason why you and I are employed. They're the real reason why we post results. Those operators on the graders and the rollers and the drivers those are the real ones. Those are the ones who eat the dust every day so that we can drive carefully. And those are the ones whose interest should be my daily concern, that I can keep them happy working and I can have this job. So as an employer of about 1,800 people and about 100,000 indirectly, I know how very, very important it is that we motivate, that we retain the staff that we have. And I do not want us to ever think that is a side issue. That's an HR issue. That is actually the main boardroom agenda item, our staff. And if we can continue to find opportunities to secure them, I am sure that they can deliver on their job well. There have been a few challenges, and I think NSSF, you have been kind enough for us, especially as UNRA, in the recent past where we have not contributed. And I know that you have engaged us, and we have had to find a way of, I think most recently, I think you cleared our debt. But if staff had known that we were not contributing, I think it was like 3 months, that could have caused problems for me. So one of the things that I want to encourage is also openness to staff. Why? Let me give you a reason why we were not contributing. It's not because we were defaulting. In fact, I think we are not in the heap of those who deliberately default. It was because at that time there was reduced releases from government. But as soon as the release came, that was number one. And I want to encourage that with our partners. Let their staff know what they are owed. Let your workers know what they are owed. Let them know that they are owed so much, that they contribute. By the way, they must also contribute. It's not just the employer's responsibility. That they must also contribute, because then that partnership is actually what secures their future. Otherwise, if they were to leave, they would only be living with what was contributed by the employer. So the point of allowing our staff to know what they're owed is important. I say this from experience on my trips on the roads, because I would often go to those lower cadre people and ask them, do you have a contract? And there is no contract. And so us as employers could actually abuse the rights of these people. So what we have done in UNRA to ensure that that is minimized or is actually eliminated is to ensure that our project managers monitor how workers are treated. Now, not all of them up to this point have been contributing, so I guess this is why we have this meeting, so that each of the people we sign a contract with, each of the companies, civil works contractors and consultants. The reason we are here today as partners is not just to summon you and make sure that you're in the room, but also to say that our teams which are here managing these projects have that additional responsibility to make sure that the workers are contributing and you, as the employers, are contributing. We want to do this together so that the roads are good roads, because we know when they know that they are safe, that their savings are safe, then we'll have good roads. When they're discontented, we see it. We see it in their output. So I just really want to thank you all so much for being here together. I do apologize I cannot be here till the end, but we have a good representation from UNRA staff. Almost half the room. Yes, and we're here to hear from you, Mr. Yota, and what else we can do to strengthen our collaboration. I thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think the stage has been set. Ice has been broken. I'll use these far end stairs now, now that the stage is for work. I can't repeat the words of the big drums have sounded, so now we just need to get down to business. We know now why we're here. The objective of the workshop is really compliance as far as improving the well-being of our workers in the road sector is concerned, and therefore we'll try and focus our discussions in this area. As I mentioned earlier, we appreciate all contributions, but we'll appreciate more if the contributions are contextualized in the subject area that we're dealing with today. Project management is big, roads are big, the sector is big, and there are many issues. There are many issues. So if we started talking about all issues, I don't think we'll leave this weekend. It's a long weekend, I know, and I know that some of you have intentions of leaving town earlier. So we'll try and focus our discussions in the subject areas. We also know who is in this room. My apologies. I'm told we have the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development representation here. This lady is here. You can raise your hand or stand up, please, so that everyone knows. The reason why we're here is because government has this institution that is here to ensure that people's well-being is not abused and they're looked after during their work life and also after their work life. So NSSF, I think that's the reason they exist. So we've had the remarks from both institutions. I don't want to repeat that, but next, now we want to hear from the subject experts, and this will form the basis of our discussions, both the panel and the open discussions later on. So we're going to start with the presentations from the Ministry, the Assistant Commissioner Labor, Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development, discussing the employment and labor rights. So let us listen very attentively and save our questions for later. You're most welcome.
I am not the Assistant Commissioner, Labor Industry Relations, but rather I bring a presentation from him, Managing Director, NSSF, my good friend, Mr. Patrick Ayota, the Executive Director, UNRA, Mrs. Arlene Kajina, all technical staff of NSSF and UNRA, members of the road construction industry present, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Hilda Nakaga. I am from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development in the Department of Labor, Industrial Relations and Productivity. I bring warm greetings from the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Agri Chivenge, and my role today is to take you through an overview of the labor laws. Before I start, could there be some people in this room right now who are well-versed with some of the labor laws? We all don't know? Even NSSF? Okay, let me have the presentation. I'll take you through. IT is failing me. Okay. I need help. Okay. So we will have an introduction, we will have the key legal provisions, and then we'll conclude. It's going to be a very short presentation. The Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development is responsible for promotion of increased labor productivity, decent employment, stable and peaceful industry relations. And some of the key functional areas of the ministry are promoting workplace safety from injuries, accidents and health hazards, that is occupational safety and health, strengthening legal, regulatory and institutional framework for labor and decent employment, strengthening labor standards enforcement mechanisms, promoting decent and productive employment, labor market information systems and services. Then we have industrial peace and harmony promoted. These are the laws that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the Employment Act plus the regulations, and then I'll talk about the Labor Disputes, Arbitration and Settlement Act, the Labor Unions Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the Workers' Compensation Act, CAP 225, the Minimum Wages Advisory Boards and Wages Council, and then the NSSF Act. So these are the general principles. And no person shall use or assist any other person in using forced or compulsory labor. Then we also have discrimination. That includes distinction, exclusion, or preference made on the basis of race, color, sex, religion, HIV status, political opinion, etc., etc. And disability, that's a very important one, now that I come from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. These are the rights and duties in employment, and they're in the Employment Act. There is weekly rest. A person should have weekly rest. Every worker should have weekly rest. Not more than 6 consecutive days should be worked without a day's rest. Then the length of working hours should be 48 hours per week or 8 hours per day. And then workers should be given annual leave, and on public holidays they're not expected to work, and where they work they're expected to be paid. We have the interesting one, maternity leave. And it's 60 working days, though we are advocating for about 90 working days. And they're supposed to be on full pay. I come from the ministry or a department where we receive labor complaints that are lodged by mothers who tell us that they're not given maternity leave, even fathers who are given just 4 working days. We are trying to ensure that you have at least 7. Then there's that interesting part of written particulars. And written particulars should have the following. They should have full names. Written particulars are the contract. And here I'm specifically talking about the contract of service. No, should be with consent from both parties. We have the wages and related notices, the duty of employer to provide work. It's interesting that an employer will give or accord a worker employment and does not provide them work. Then there's also permitted deductions. Any tax rate subscription like NSSF or contribution imposed by law, provident or pension fund or scheme established or maintained by the employer or any other person, including union dues. Those are permitted deductions. Any deductions that are not permitted, you can lodge a complaint to the labor officer. And every employee is required to receive a written pay statement. That is the pay slip. There's this interesting issue that I come with today of employment of children, and we have established that in the construction industry, there is a lot of employment of children. Employment of children. It is illegal to employ a child who is below the age of 12 years. However, the law allows that children of about 14 can be employed, though with light work, under adult supervision, and it should not stop them from going to school. Another thing I wanted to talk about here is casual employment. Most of the persons in the room are contractors or consultants. Now, what employers do, they contract contractors who then get other employees who work. Unfortunately, these employees are awarded or are given contracts that are short, casual, but it's supposed to be 4 months, not more than 4 months. Should it be more than 4 months, the employee should be given a permanent contract. But we have received a lot of complaints from complainants who have been working on these short-term contracts. 4 months, they are renewable. They keep renewing. 4 months, they renew. So you find someone has worked for 5 years under these short contracts, under the casualization of labor, and we know that they are not entitled to anything in the Employment Act. Now, settlement of grievances, where an employer neglects or refuses to fulfill the terms of contract of employment, or where a complaint or a labor dispute arises as to the rights or liabilities of either party under contract of employment or under this act, the aggrieved party may report the matter to the labor officer. So the labor officer has powers to investigate and dispose of these complaints, and they can use conciliation, mediation, arbitration, adjudication, or any other appropriate means acceptable by the parties. We have the Labor Unions Act 2006. This one is entirely freedom of association. And we know that it is a constitutional right for employees to organize into a labor union and assist in the running of these labor unions. And employers are not supposed to interfere in the union activities. They should also recognize and sign collective bargaining agreements. There's this Occupational Safety and Health Act 2006, and we know that it's the responsibility of an employer to ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, that all measures for the protection of his or her workers and the general public from the dangerous aspects of the employer's undertaking at his or her own cost, and that the environment for work should be kept free from any hazard or
the Managing Director, National Social Security Fund, who has briefly stepped out, and the Managing Director, Uganda National Roads Authority, distinguished ladies and gentlemen from the road construction industry, colleagues from NSSF, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, and Hilda, I'm glad to see you, and I was listening closely. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. So I think I will skip a little bit of what I had prepared to present and go straight to what hasn't been covered by the previous speakers. So we shall go straight to the mandate of the fund. We all know from what Hilda has just presented. I'm sorry, my name is Bukenya Naima. I work with National Social Security Fund as the legal officer, enforcement, and debt recovery. I am here to take you through the amendment, NSSF amendment, as well as the obligations therein and some opportunities that we can explore. So we all know that in the year 1985, we had the passage of the law, the National Social Security Fund Act, which has its background in the International Labour Instrument as well as the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. This law had extensive provisions regarding social security and elaborates on the right to social security in Uganda. But in the last 2 years, I think in 2023, there was an amendment to this particular law that we are going to explore a little bit further. So in the NSSF Act, we have a broad mandate, but in summary, this is what we do. We receive Social Security contributions from all eligible employers. We also carry out prudent investment from those particular contributions to ensure that there is a return on those savings for the members. And we also pay out benefits at the point or when the members qualify to actually come and collect those contributions, or what we call the savings. We need to know who's eligible. I believe most of us here are eligible, but the law is quite clear on who is eligible to save with NSSF. And with the new, or the amendment, we believe now that we have we have more people who fall within the category of people who are eligible to save with NSSF. So according to the law, that's the kind of person who is eligible to save with NSSF as long as you are 16 and above, and below 55, you have or you must save with NSSF. But the conditions are you must be in employment that is not exempted. We shall elaborate more a little bit about the exempted employment. But the non-resident employees are also exempted from eligibility, or they are not mandated to serve with NSSF, and you must not be employed outside Uganda. So for purposes of NSSF, as long as you are 16, I know, Hilda, in your presentation, you noted out the employment of children, so that issue might come out, but we shall explain because there are exceptions when it comes to age, especially between 16 and 18. So, yes, going straight to the amendment, what did we learn, or what's new in this law? From the previous law, we had a limit on who was required, or which employers were required to remit or contribute on behalf of their employees. But under the amendment, we have a broader definition of who an employer is. And according to the amendment, we see that government qualifies as an employer, companies registered under the Companies Act, firms, what we call firms, perhaps, like, for example, the law firms, or those entities that register as law firms, or businesses. Like you may have just registered a business name and you start operating your business. You qualify to, or you are required to register with NSSF as long as you have an employee or employees. Then partnerships. Partnerships fall within, the firms fall within the partnerships. Entities incorporated under the Trustees Incorporations Act. And also we have other non-incorporated bodies, but exist as if incorporated bodies in any other form. They all qualify. And also we have principal contractors or subcontractors who provide services. I believe most of us fall here under the last category. The definition is quite broad, but I think most of us fall here because we end up contracting to provide a service, but we get employees to work for us in that line. So all these fall within the definition of employers who should register, with broadening of the coverage, because now the law allows people working with the informal sector to come and register for voluntary contributions and other forms of contributions that may be voluntary. I know the voluntary contributions are a little bit relaxed in the way that they apply because they don't have a standard mode of contribution, but it's now something that we seek to improve and define clearly. Also, we have already seen that the law is no longer requiring an employer that has more than 5 employees to register. All employers, regardless of the number of employees, you're required to register with NSSF. And you qualify or you are classified as contributing employers. The idea here is that every eligible employee should register as a member of the fund and shall make regular contributions. I think eligibility has already been explained earlier. Age 16 and above. And the factor here is employment, for as long as you're employed. Now, in the amendment, we also have voluntary contributions, like I already mentioned. Voluntary contributions, like the word suggests, it's voluntary, it's not mandatory on you. Even a member of NSSF can also make extra contributions on top of what they make under the law, or on top of the mandatory contributions of the 15%. You may wish to make an extra contribution and come to the fund and perhaps find a way you can be supported to make those contributions. But voluntary contribution also extends to people working in the informal sector and other forms of employees. I believe also people working with government under public service can also come and make voluntary contributions under the new law. If the employer has been authorized to make voluntary contributions, then that can be done. Remember the law on employment, as Hilda explained, I don't know that she went that far, but I believe the Employment Act prohibits employers from making unauthorized deductions. And among the authorized deductions, they can make on someone's wages, NSSF contributions. So for you to proceed and make a deduction from someone's wages, it has to be authorized. And in this, we mean that the employee must permit you to make extra deductions on top of what has been stipulated under the law. This is for your own benefit. The benefits have been explained by our managing director, and I believe we shall explore more on that, but it's something that can be done by anyone, even when you contribute to NSSF. Self-employed, I already mentioned the informal sector. Most of the people here, majority, I don't know, we don't have the statistics, but we believe that majority of the people who are working are actually in the informal sector, and some are self-employed. So if you feel like you wish to make any voluntary contributions and you're self-employed, you will be guided on how best you can do that, but the law allows and opens the space to people who are self-employed to make contributions. Now in the amendment, we have midterm access. Midterm access is something, it means that if, for example, you are 45 years of age and above, and you've worked for 10 years or more, and you feel like you want to access some of your benefits, the qualifying factors here are the age and the duration in employment. Not in employment, actually, the duration you've spent contributing or saving with NSSF, which must be 10 years and above. You qualify to only access 20% of your savings at that point. That means that if you're between 45 and 55, you may wish to come and make that withdrawal or access that benefit. Also, a person who's disabled or people have different disabilities, they are 40 years of age and above, and by reason of that disability, they wish to access some of their savings, the law allows them to access 50% of their accrued benefits. But you know, disability can happen at any time. Today you're okay, the next time you become disabled. So the law has allowed you to, for as long as you fall or you meet the conditions laid out in the Act, being 45 years of age and above, and having made contributions for the last 10 years, then for the reason of that disability, you may access your 50% of your benefits. So in the amendment, we have other changes. Currently, or now, we have the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development and the Ministry of Finance, both playing a supervisory role on the functions and activities of the fund. We also have improved governance. Like you see, we have a tripartite board representative. We have representatives of workers and representatives of employees, of the employers on the board to advise and guard against any, I wouldn't say illegal because we cannot do anything legal, but to oversee the functions and the activities of the fund. We also have the improvements on the appointments of the statutory officers, the managing director, the deputy managing director, and the corporation secretary. There is also improvement in the punishments, and this is where I would want to explain or expound more, because my main role is to enforce, and people do not really know that the law has changed. The people you meet and their approach, even when you've taken a matter to court, is a little bit relaxed. The law has actually improved the sentences. The sentence, if you're found guilty of non-compliance, is about a year imprisonment, and there are fines that are attached to that. And those penalties or punishments can run together. So I believe we need to pay attention there, because the fund is really working around that strongly, and we have a great team across the country to ensure that there is compliance. So the matters go all the way to the court, and people end up in prison for non-compliance. So we also need to appreciate members or qualifying factors to your benefits, because there are so many of you who are here, you're like, they have been deducting my money for the last 20 years, but when will I ever enjoy my money? So you need to appreciate these conditions, or you need to appreciate, because the right to social security is not, like, it's not there to kind of prepare you, but the government is there to safeguard your health and your well-being at a time when employment runs out, or when you're forced out of employment due to different conditions. So the law provides that you must have reached the age 55, and proof, actually the fund requires you to provide proof for that, because some of you, it keeps on changing. Today you're claiming to be 58, the other day you're claiming to be 54, so that we do a lot of work to ensure that indeed you're 55 years of age and above. That's called the age benefit. We also have withdrawal benefits. This happens when someone reaches the age 50 and is unemployed, or has been unemployed for like 1 year. That means you can come and withdraw your benefits. There is what we call the invalidity benefit, where people get sick. Here we have a common cause or a common case of mental illness. People have those issues where they mentally switch off. And even when you claim to be mentally off, we need to assess and get proof that indeed you qualify to access your benefits for that reason. Upon death, or what we call the survivor benefits, here, this happens, for example, if your parent was serving in the NSSF and dies, or one of us, even myself, if I passed on the next day, my husband can come and provide the necessary information to prove that indeed death happened to me, to be able to access my benefits, to benefit my children. That's what we call the survivor benefits. But here, for you to be able to safeguard this, you need to provide sufficient information for us to be able to find it easy to verify, because at some point, people change. For example, spouses keep on changing. They keep on changing. We have people who have a habit of changing spouses. So if that happens, please be quick at coming to the fund to update that information, because we might end up giving the money to the wrong person. So for that to be safeguarded, you need to provide accurate information and keep on constantly updating where there are changes, even with children, okay? You may have registered your children as your beneficiaries, but things can change. You may discover that indeed they are not your children. We are seeing these things happening in the news every now and then. Someone comes up and says, we did a DNA, and these children are not my children. So if you don't make those changes, we find trouble verifying this information upon your demise, and we cannot call you back to give us the information. So keep on updating the information to be able to support the fund to help fulfill your wishes upon your demise. When someone moves to exempted employment, like I mentioned, people working perhaps with government because they have a pension structure or they have a scheme where their social security is catered for. So when you move into exempted employment, you can claim or withdraw your benefits, but still you need to provide the evidence, because for us we work with evidence. Or if you move into another country and you have a job in that country and they have a social security kind of scheme or structure that caters for your social security, you may require to be guided or you may seek guidance from a lawyer for you to be able to access your benefits for that reason. So now we've explained briefly the new amendments. At this point, we want to go through the obligations or employer obligations under the law. What are our obligations as employers? Employers are required. I think you need to refer, first of all, to the definition of an employer. Who's an employer? Before you establish your obligations or you understand your obligations. An employer is required to register their companies as eligible employers. I'll explain here. I think I don't know whether we have people who have done this, but I know there are employers who have companies registered halfway. What do I mean halfway? They just register a name, begin to operate, but they do not provide further information. I know if there are lawyers in this room, they know that you have to register the details of the directors and the secretaries. Because when we come to the point of prosecution, we need to be able to lift the veil, understand or uncover the people behind this particular company. So if you register halfway, you only register a name and go ahead and operate, we shall still find a place in the act where we can prosecute you for non-registration or for failure to furnish accurate information upon registration. Employers are also required to register all the employees. I know some of you classify your employees. You have those employees you classify as permanent employees, contract employees, casual laborers, temporary employees, and all that. But the law requires you to register all your employees and be honest in your registration, because that's where most of the problems come from. You register some and others you don't because you believe they don't qualify to register or serve with the fund. For the NSSF law is quite clear that all employees should be registered, and this obligation is on the employer. At the point of employing someone, ensure that they have registered with NSSF and they give you their NSSF what? Number. Remember the eligibility criteria for employment. You're supposed to keep records, accurate records of your employees, and say payrolls and all these other records that you're required to have as an employer, because that helps us to verify when we come or when a team comes to check your compliance or conduct an audit. So having accurate information and proper records helps us to verify whatever statements you may be making. So the law requires you to have that in order, or to have all your records in order. Also, there is an obligation to make timely remittances. Timely means you're guided by the law. I believe we all know by the 15th day of a month, you're supposed to make those contributions. The minute you delay, the law applies with all the penalties. Okay? So ensure that you make timely contributions. Yes, I've already mentioned keeping proper records, payrolls, contracts, and all the documents pertaining to the relationship you have with your different employees. Also, you're supposed to work hand in hand with the fund to ensure compliance with the act. Because we are a team, we need to ensure that you do not fall on the other side. where they find you non-compliant, because you'll end up paying triple of what you should have paid, even more. That's the law under which myself and the team that is not here operate mainly to ensure that there is compliance enforcement. And in this, you need to look at Section 44 of the NSSF Act that gives us the power to prosecute for these different elements or these different components that I've already mentioned. For example, if you knowingly make false statements or representations, it means that you can be prosecuted entirely on that fact for making false presentations. The charge sheet, we can have different charge sheets charging you for all these different elements, or we can have one charge sheet. So the non-remittance could be just an item in that charge sheet. So if you're found to have provided false information, you can be prosecuted for that. Also, failure to disclose material facts. I know employers have people working for them and they refuse to disclose. Some of them lock us outside, and you refuse our team from coming to do their inspections. But believe me, the law mandates or empowers them to do the inspections, and if you hurt or stop anyone to conduct their inspections, you will be prosecuted. Failure to register or furnish particulars required under the Act, that is also an offense. We have seen the amendment. All those different employers or all the different classes of employers are required to register. If you call yourself a company, ensure that you have registered with a company registry. If you call yourself a partnership, ensure that you've properly registered and incorporated. If you call yourselves a school, be guided of how to have the school registered and the board of trust governors or whichever governing entity of that school. Whichever business you're doing, be guided to ensure that you have met all the legal requirements to run that business. Otherwise, you'll be prosecuted for failure to register. And registration is not only in line with the NSSF Act, but in line with the law. Unauthorized deductions, I've already mentioned that. There are employers who have a tendency of deducting from people's wages. What can I say? For destruction of items, tools of work, you go ahead and make unauthorized deduction. That will affect the total wage someone earns at the end of the day. And it will affect their NSSF contribution. And this is also an offense under the Employment Act. So you have to ensure that you do not do or make any unauthorized deductions. If you fail to pay the contributions within the prescribed time, you'll still be prosecuted for that. And if you do anything that results in the loss caused to the fund, you as an employer, that will also lead to prosecution. So the law gives us the power to prosecute, and these matters can be taken to any magistrate court in your area of operation. In Kampala, we have several magistrate courts. If your business is found around Nakawa, we shall be able to prosecute you in that particular location. If it's found in Gulu, we shall still be able to prosecute you because magistrate courts are spread across the country and we are able to reach all those areas. So ensure that you don't think that you're very far away or you're not hiding. We shall find you wherever you are and you'll be fully prosecuted because the jurisdiction is wide. It's not to a single court. Currently, we can reach whichever region you are and we'll be able to prosecute you. So I believe since this is an activity that is founded on the partnership the fund has with UNRA, we need to be able to understand how we can bridge the gap. This is something that we need to look into to be able to be more compliant and support each other in ensuring that there is compliance. The fund is now focusing on entering into valuable partnerships with various stakeholders and key players of the pension sector. Okay? like I mentioned, our board is a representative board. All the workers are represented, employers are represented. We have the Ministry of Gender overseeing our activities and our work. We believe that we have a full representation of the pension sector. We are now spreading out to different entities. We work with UNRA and all these other entities to ensure that we raise awareness so that you understand what the law requires of you, but also you avoid finding yourself on the other side or being non-compliant. Also, our efforts are geared at ensuring or increasing enforcement and compliance with the NSSF Act and creating awareness about social security. Most people do not appreciate that the social security or whatever contributions they make with the fund, they are for their own personal benefit. So it's our duty to ensure that you appreciate that and also help us, maybe as employees or and employers, to ensure that there is more compliance. We need to ensure that there are more policies in place to cater for social security, and this will ensure adherence to the obligations, okay? And we need to have guidelines to guide temporary, casual employees' engagements with the contractors. I believe most contractors have this. This is happening. But like I've explained, the NSSF Act does not discriminate what we require of you. For as long as you are an employee and you receive a wage, we shall come and collect the contributions. Actually, we don't have to collect. You have to make the contribution before we come and collect from you. The rest I've actually explained and elaborated, but what we need to ensure is that we all register as required by the law. You register, and also your employees, so that you can be guided. You may find that the cost of compliance is less compared to the cost of non-compliance. I've seen it. Yesterday I saw it. A judicial officer mentioned it to an employer who had to pay more in penalties compared to the standard contribution and interest. So I believe the cost of non-compliance is bigger than the cost of what? Compliance. Let's do a self-assessment in respect to outstanding contributions when conducting compliance assessments. Yes. And prepare TORs that include compliance with Social Security during the procurement processes. I think this goes to all of us and UNRA to ensure that this is done. For us, we do it especially at the point of registration, and also every year we issue clearance certificates to ensure that we have those checks. But also it has to happen across the board. When at contract negotiations, contract signing, execution, and conclusion and payment of the final contract fee, you have to ensure that the contractor has complied with the law at all levels. Utilize automation process of the fund to ensure contractors and consultants comply with their obligation under the fund. This is, I think, work in progress, but I believe it's something that we can work on to ensure more compliance, and we will self-monitor. That's the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, NSSF. I think that is the gist of the matter today. I really want to appreciate NSSF for the in-depth piece of information that we've received. I have learned a few things, but I want to give a chance to everyone in the room now to reflect on this. According to our program, we're supposed to have a health break. And this health break does not include tea, because it was 30 minutes. I think you consumed the time and the tea before we started the program. So I'll only allow 10 minutes for us to stand up, take a breather, and be back in 10 minutes, exactly 10 minutes. And then we get down to business. So it's exactly 10 past or 11 past. So at exactly 20 past, we'll be starting our next session to discuss all the presentations. And I think what we've received from NSSF will form the bigger part of this discussion. So in 10 minutes, listen to everybody else at the same time so that we don't break the flow. So UNRA's presentation will be made right now by our senior officer in charge of environmental and social safeguards. And then after that, we'll go into a panel discussion, which will lead us to the closure for the day. Allow me also to recognize the presence of the Executive Director of UNABSEC. UNABSEC is the association that unites all local contractors, and I think some international contractors in the country. So she's here with us now. So we have good representation from the different stakeholders as far as this subject is concerned. Please, Caroline, come and take it away.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caroline Natwera, Senior Environment Officer with UNRA, and directly in charge of monitoring compliance of our contractors in terms of environment, social safety issues in our contracts. All protocol observed. I want to go straight to my presentation in the interest of time. My presentation today is going to focus on the welfare of our workers, contributions of NSSF being part of what we expect from our contractors in terms of what they should be giving to our workers on our projects. Construction sites have very many challenges, as we all know. They're very busy, there's physical work, there are automotives moving. So it is very important that we focus on ensuring that our workers are in a steady state of mind so that they can deliver on their mandate. So welfare and safety provisions help these workers to be more steady so that they can deliver on what they're supposed to do. So if we have some provisions in terms of welfare and safety, then we reduce fatigue of the workers, promote hygiene, and improve the workers' health, reduce the illnesses and accidents that are related to the work that they do. If we do not have these facilities, then we weaken their commitment, reduce their health, and then finally also their productivity is affected. So I want to share our experiences, what it has been like. What does workers' welfare entail? While today the focus is mainly on NSSF, we want to look at it from a broader perspective. So welfare is anything that the employer gives on top or over and above the wage that the employee gets. So some of these are voluntary, others are not voluntary. So today we have been reminded that NSSF is not a voluntary contribution. It is on our projects, or as employers, we have an obligation to provide, to pay NSSF for our workers. Others include insurance. As I said, our projects are quite risky. So ensuring our workers, providing accommodation, sanitary facilities, drinking water, food, the basics of life that can help a worker to be more productive. And then workers' safety. This is an area that I'm very passionate about, protecting our employees from work-related illnesses. The lady from Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development made an emphasis of this. Also reminding us that we have an obligation to protect our workers, and in case they're injured, then we must treat them and also ensure that they are compensated if they are supposed to be. So safety of the work area involves developing a safe and healthy, developing policies and plans that can guide the whole process. It is not a one-off thing that you come in today because there is a group like this coming, then you put, all the nice signages, and then after the meeting is ended, you close. No. You must have policies, plans, and programs that can help you to ensure that whatever you're doing is sustainable. Why do we emphasize employee safety on our projects? One, to maintain a good and safe working environment, not just for the workers, but even for the people, the visitors. I can't imagine a minister visiting your site and they get an accident there. That would be embarrassing. So in maintaining a good safe working environment, improving morale and efficiency of the workers, which will lead to productivity. If workers are safe, then they'll give their best. And then lack of safety leads to loss of lives. This we all know. Injuries, which are very common, loss of equipment, time and other resources, legal and financial repercussions, and then high insurance premiums and reputational risks. If your company or your organization gets very many accidents or injuries, then when you go in to negotiate for insurance, of course, the insurer will look at the risks. What risks have you been exposed to? And then they will calculate their premiums accordingly. Then reputational risks. This applies to all of us here, the employer, as UNRA, the consultant who is supervising the work, and the contractor who is actually doing the work. So if anything bad happens on ground, all our reputations are at risk. So it's important to manage safety. What are the labor issues on our projects? I just thought I need to highlight some of these. The lady from Ministry of Gender already talked about this, and most are actually covered under the Employment Act of 2006. But I pointed out those that are of interest, much interest to us as UNRA, or what we usually look out for. One is recruitment, the recruitment process, then contracts, workers having contracts. This has been a challenge up to now because because the law was a bit ambiguous, saying it can be written or verbal. I don't know if that is different now. So written contracts, we insist on written contracts. Remuneration, this has been an issue where the workers complain that the pay is a bit low compared to the standards of living currently. And then discrimination in employment, this is also a challenge. Also looking at the gender perspectives, and then settlement of grievances within the workers is an issue that we deal with also as UNRA on our projects. Then medical examination, pre-employment medical examination, especially for areas where the worker is going to be exposed to high risk. We get these complaints when a worker is leaving the job and they claim to have sustained back injuries on the job. And we cannot verify because there was no examination before the employer took on this employee. Payment of wages on time is also a factor that needs to be addressed. Then deductions. Already we're told that a deduction to be made, the employee has to consent. But sometimes we get these deductions because probably there is a case that the employee has to answer and then money is deducted from their salaries. Then we also deal with the issues of HIV and AIDS on our projects where we have our workers exposed and the communities in which they work. What informs our actions as UNRA? We have several legislations and frameworks that inform our actions. One is the International Labour Organization, where we have different conventions and recommendations that we follow. Of course, these have been cascaded down into the local laws and regulations, so we base on that also to implement and follow up on some of these requirements. Then, of course, we also have the laws of Uganda that guide our actions, the Constitution of Uganda, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Workers' Compensation Act, Employment Act, the NSSF Act, and then the National Environment Act, among many others. And then at the UNRA level, what guides our action as an institution? One is our core values. Our core values, I can read them to you again: integrity, teamwork, excellence, customer-centric, and safety. So for the safety of our workers, UNRA values this very much. It's one of our core values, so we make sure that our work sites are safe at all times. And then we also have the Environment and Social Safeguards Policy of 2016. Then we also developed an Environment and Social Management System in 2018, and the Safety Management System in 2019. We have contracts, both the general specifications for roads and bridges, and then the specific conditions that we put in our contracts, depending on the risks that are envisaged on a project. And we also have development partners that we work with: the African Development Bank, World Bank, Islamic Development Bank. All these have their safeguards requirements that we must abide to. Okay, the Environment and Social Management System for UNRA, this is in the interest of the contractors, those who are new, because I know that those who have been with us, we've been going through this, although it has been a while. It provides procedures and guidelines that can help us to comply with the safeguard requirements that are expected of you as a contractor doing UNRA business. It provides for your compliance assessment. What do we check out when we are checking that a contractor is complying with the requirements? And among the things we check out is NSSF. Are you remitting NSSF for your workers? Do your workers have contracts? And then we check on the safety requirements, among many others. The safety management system we have in place was developed and approved in 2019, and it's dependent on the Plan, Do, Check, Act model, where we keep improving as time goes by, or as we envisage or see more risks in our business, then we revise accordingly. So this also gives us guidelines that we follow when we are ensuring safety of our workers, both at UNRA and at project level. Then the works contracts are also very clear. We have requirements for environment, social, and safety that are embedded in our documents. And also, we also have provisions for penalties in case a contractor is very non-compliant, although I'm yet to see our RIs implement these or pull out these, but maybe after this meeting we'll see that coming out. I talked about the development partners that we have. I just picked one of the safeguard requirements for the World Bank because it seems to be very inclusive, talks about labor and working conditions, assessment of environment, pollution control, community health and safety, among others. So these guide us when we are implementing projects that are funded by these funding agencies, and I can assure you they are very rigorous and sometimes help us to achieve more in terms of compliance. So what are the requirements on our projects? I already talked about where they come from the legal framework, from the risk assessments that we do, from the environment and social impact assessments that we undertake on the projects, and then some requirements are cross-cutting. For example, welfare, labor, they are cross-cutting really, although some things are really specific, dependent on the risks envisaged on the project. What progress have we made? We've increased awareness of EHS management throughout our projects, so we do not have cases of I don't know, no, because it is very clear when a contractor is coming in, we make these requirements clear, how to comply with safety, how to manage labor issues, how to comply with environmental requirements. And then we have EHS requirements embedded in our contracts. I talked about that. And then EHS personnel at all levels. The employer has environment, social safety people to monitor these requirements. The contractor has, and the supervision consultants have these EHS personnel. And then we also employ nominated service providers to look at specific issues, HIV, AIDS, gender-based violence, violence against children, all these, and making sure that when we go into the community with a project, we do not cause more havoc, but leave the communities with a good road, and also the community better than we found them. And then more contractors are coming up to develop environment and social management systems, which is a good thing, and it's a requirement by the National Environment Act audit regulations. So more contractors are coming up with this. And then we have easier mechanisms of reporting non-compliances. The communities are now more aware. We have grievance management committees at community levels, wherever we have projects. So this also helps us to know what is happening down there. Areas where we need to improve in terms of welfare, we still have challenges of provisions for basic facilities, drinking water, food on site, sanitary facilities. So we need to improve in this area. Then inadequate facilitation for our EHS staff to perform their duties. This is also still an area that needs to be improved, to improve compliance on some of these requirements. And then making our sites more gender sensitive. We haven't yet attained that 30% requirement of women on our work sites. So sometimes they will not put provisions for the women to work on sites, and this also needs to be improved further. And then NSSF. NSSF has been an issue on our projects, but I think after this engagement, all of us are going to work together to make sure that we comply in this area. Make sure workers have contracts signed, they are NSSF remitted and in time. And then we also still have challenges of the HIV/AIDS service providers not being facilitated well to do their work, and low appreciation of environment, health, social safety safeguards on sites. This is where we have a problem. The contractor sometimes may not see the importance of giving a worker a contract. Yet when they get into problems, an accident, then now the process of getting them rehabilitated or treated or compensated becomes a challenge. And then the subcontractors that we bring on board are really not compliant in most cases. So the main contractor may do the NSSF, may give contracts to their workers, but the subcontractor they've given a small job will be doing business very different. So that area also needs to be addressed. In terms of safety, we still have challenges of how we transport our workers, which exposes them to risks. And then traffic management, those who use the roads where we are working, this is still a challenge that we need to improve. Using safe methods of work at quarry sites and people who are working at heights, we find challenges. And then concealment or late reporting of accidents. If an accident happens on site, we have a process that should be followed to report. But this sometimes does not happen until a worker comes and complains months or later, when they can't be treated or when they can't be compensated. And then provision of adequate and appropriate PPE is also still a challenge, and enforcement, because some workers will be given the PPE, but they will not use it. Awareness of health and safety requirements for the workers, and workers knowing their rights. I think this area needs to be improved. For example, after this engagement, if we can let the workers know that they are entitled to NSSF contributions, then they would demand. But if they don't know, then they can't demand for what they don't know. And then the labor issues, I talked about the low remuneration on our projects, which is a major complaint. And then non-streamlined methods of recruitment, because if there is no contract signed, the foreman will recruit, someone at the campsite will recruit. So this needs to be streamlined so that, like we have been advised, if a worker comes in, they need to be registered, their particulars picked, and then registered for NSSF that they must get. And then physical assault and abuse of workers on site. We still have some of these problems. Sometimes it's a problem of language. The supervisor speaks a different language, the worker speaks a different language, and if they can't communicate, sometimes it can result into physical boxing. And then dismissal without fair hearing. The workers are supposed to have a workers' council or committee that protects them, that should discuss their rights, their obligations, their challenges, but usually a worker may be dismissed without a fair hearing, which is a major labor issue. And then poor grievance management with the contractors' workforce. Like I said, the grievance committees at the contractors' level are not very effective. And then inadequate rest days. Today, when the lady from Ministry of Gender was presenting about the working hours, I saw my colleagues surprised. We're supposed to work 8 hours a day, how? You know, because some of these workers on our projects work Monday to Sunday until late in the evening. So this is an area that also needs to be addressed. And then overtime payments. This is very unclear because remember, the workers are not given pay slips like we've been advised or reminded, so they don't know how much are you paying me for how many hours, how has this been calculated. So this also needs to be addressed as we handle labor issues. In conclusion, we need to consolidate the gains that we've made. We cannot say we have not achieved anything, we have. But we can do more, we can do better. And such engagements are opportunities for all of us to remind ourselves of our roles and responsibilities so that we can help our workers have a better work environment. We need to change our mindset in terms of managing the social environment and safety on our projects. If we do not, then that causes us to, move steps back where we came from. And I believe now we are on the right track to do better. And I thank NSSF for giving us this opportunity to remind ourselves of our obligations. And as a labor concern, contractors should provide avenues for the workers to air out their grievances and have them addressed and managed. If that does not happen, that's how we get workers striking, which is not desirable. We need to work together and make sure that we have a better workforce to deliver very good roads for the good of our country. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Caroline. So that marks the end of the presentations. We've received as much information as we would have this morning. So which means we would like now to hear from everyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak. Unfortunately, we didn't have a representative from the contractors presenting to us how they're doing it and why they're doing what they do. So in this next session, we expect to hear a lot from yourselves, how you feel about the whole exercise and the law itself. So I want to make 2 announcements. All these presentations are being uploaded, and you should have access to them through the link if you registered. If you didn't register, make sure you do so. I think Fenon can give so you just need to scan with your phone, that's all. And then you should be able to register, and then you'll have access. So that's number 1. Number 2, if you're sitting somewhere and you have a key that looks like this, Land Cruiser, please let me know quietly. We'll pick it up. Somebody's looking for a key. It's one of these. So just look around wherever you're sitting. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going into the panel discussion. And I would like to request everyone who has presented this morning and this afternoon to come up the stage and take a seat. NSSF, UNRA, Ministry of Gender, if you're here, please take your seats over here. Then once we're done with that, we will be looking towards the closure of the day. I think you can see how I'm trying to make sure we get as much content as possible in as short a time as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our panelists. I will ask you to introduce yourselves once again when you come up here so that people remember who you are and so that the questions and the discussions can be directed to the right persons. You have a mic right next to your chair. So we shall start the introductions from left to right. My left, and that's your right. Switch it on.
Hilda Nakaga is my name, from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development.
Caroline Natwera, Senior Environment Officer from UNRA.
From Gisa, representing NSSF.
Okay. So that's the spectrum of our discussants. The procedure is going to be, we shall have a moving mic, and we're going to have someone to represent the contractors. They didn't represent, but I believe there are going to be questions that are directed to them, and that is the contractors. We'll ask UNAPSEC to send someone up to constitute part of the panel. So we don't have a consultant here, but I believe anything that touches the consultant, UNRA will answer, because we do the same thing, supervise the rest of the project. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you introduce yourself, please?
Elizabeth Mohebwa is my name, the Executive Director for UNAPSEC. Happy to be here, and apologies for coming in a bit late.
All right, you're all welcome. So we have a roving mic. And then you ask your question. I want us to make this exercise as easy as possible, and therefore, 1, we shall try not to repeat questions that have been asked or make comments that have already been made. 2, we shall try not to go into the niceties of thanking. I know UNRA has done a very good job for a long time, so we shall thank each other when we go out. So for now, let's stick to business, and we leave all the other discussions for the later part when we go for lunch. I hope we agreed on that. And we also want to make sure that we stay focused to the subject of the day or the topic. And then finally, we need to give each other a chance. So I would request that you don't ask 17 questions. We just keep to a few questions and the topic so that these members can answer them. We also have an opportunity to continue with this discussion even after this today. So let's not be wary that this is the end of the discussion. I know there are many questions that are coming. Everyone came with expectations, but also the takeaway from this discussion is something that you need to capture very well. So we'll start with behind there. Someone is already holding a mic. Please, let's test the ability to hear from where you are, and then we'll take it. Start from there.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Brian Sawachirianga, and working with the Gold Sun Holdings in Rila. We are doing a 100-kilometer construction project. And the challenge we have goes to NSSF. Yeah, we're mainly employing casual laborers within the project area. As you all know that if you're doing a 100-kilometer road, right from point 1 up to the 99 kilometer, there are different groups of people within the project area that we are giving employment. So we end up employing casual laborers. These are their maximum period of employment is about 3 to 10 days. The challenge we have is that these people are earning daily wages. I'm just giving you an example for unskilled laborers, like 10 to 15,000 per day. So if someone works for about 5-6 days, let's say just 10 days, that's around 150,000. It becomes hard, completely hard for us with the contractors to start deducting the 5% from them. This is simply because that they are not sensitized. We are just requesting NSSF that wherever there is a project, a UNRA project, in any region where the UNRA project is going to be, to put more emphasis on sensitizing the people, the people around that area, so that they understand clearly that as you're negotiating on your daily rate, there is a 5% that has to be deducted from you, so that it enables us even fasten up the process of NSSF contributions. That's the challenge. We keep on moving from area A to area B, and the chances of getting the same people who worked in area A are the same chances you're going to find in the next area. So I'm just requesting, on behalf of Gulsan, we're just requesting that sensitization of these locals within the project areas should be key, especially before or during the project, the contract has been signed. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Engineer Alex Otim. I'm a project manager in UNRA. My question goes to UNABSEC. It's frequent that when we are involving with the contractors, especially foreign, hardly do you see UNABSEC in the scene. When we are handling NSSF issues, how many workers have been paid, when you're down there managing and when issues come up. Is there a good control or understanding between the real contractors who come in and UNABSEC so that you can help us and as well as help them, because some of them do not know the laws within. And when you tell them ABCDs to follow, there is no impartial body which really will explain and they'll understand. They will think that we are trying to make sure they achieve employer-related issues only, but while this is something that UNABSEC could have taken on to be a bridge between us. How is the relationship between the two, especially when we're implementing the projects? Rarely does UNABSEC come around. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm called Elitha Kasingo. Has to work by reducing under the compulsion of directed physical and social needs. NSSF is saving from this worker and the contractor is saving. For us, we have a very good contractor who is very compliant, and I'm proud to talk about that. Now, this worker is saving and is getting that interest at the end of a prescribed period. But you are reaping a lot. Yes, that's good for the development of a country. Now, are you considering this worker when it comes to opportunities that are as a result of your investments? What I mean, you have mega investments. Take an example of the Temangalo satellite city. One time I was talking to a friend of mine who works with NSF, and I was interested to go in there and check and see whether I can maybe strategize and grab myself a structure. I was told, no, wait. When the right time comes, we shall invite the public. Now, these workers are saving year to year, and there are those, I'm sure, who meet the criteria of, you call it early access to NSSF, who meet the requirements. But they are not given a chance. Instead, they are made to compete with the public. I find that an area of concern. So do we have, in your planning, any means of giving priority to our workers? I'm speaking as a sociologist and as a workers' welfare advocate, rather than just leaving them to compete with the public. I know competition is healthy, but these are the guys who are now saving, who are making us thrive. Do we have any way of considering them, giving them a priority? Thank you.
My name is Moses Omnyokol. I work with UNRA. I have 2 to 3 questions. All go to NSSF. The first one is to do with voluntary contribution. Can I make intermittent voluntary contribution? Like if I'm self-employed, my salary is not as steady as someone who is employed. Can I contribute as when I get the money? That's the first one. The second one is to do with the survivors' benefits. At what time are beneficiaries identified? Is it at the time when someone is saving, or later when the person has died and the survivors erupt to come and look to be beneficiaries? And if it is at the time when someone is saving and is identified as the person, how do you handle situations where other people erupt to claim to be beneficiaries and they may be not included in the original list? How do you handle that to basically isolate this a beneficiary and this is not a beneficiary? As you know, sometimes there could be conflicts in families where one family is known, one was separate, and that kind of arrangement. Then, to do with the, sometimes, okay, not sometimes, most times in UNRA projects, we work as projects. Projects are temporal, meaning you go to a community.
Hello? It's okay. I think we'll start with that session. I believe NSSF is captured all of them. Most of them seem to be touching their presentation, so we shall ask from the left. Do you have any responses? Do you have a comment you would like to make? Okay, UNRA? Not yet. You sure you don't want to clarify something that could have been misunderstood somewhere along the way? All right, so we go to NSSF.
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. I think the first one from Brian, where he talked about the challenges in the road work because of casual laborers, and a number of them are not sensitized. I think, one, I appreciate the fact that we're having this partnership and having this come out. Not as an excuse, sometimes when some of the projects in the past would start, wouldn't know until maybe someone's in the field work and notices that there's a project going on. But right now that we have this partnership, I believe that for every project that's about to start, I think we're going to know, so that we can go to the specific areas where we know that you are likely to employ or recruit and be able to have these sensitizations and work with the local communities. But also to state that in so many of the areas, we have the branches, we have a big branch network, so we are able to reach all the areas. So I think let's just stay in partnership, and I think that was, a good idea for us to be able to look into. So as a challenge, but I think it's an opportunity on our end, so thank you so much. The next one was to do with opportunities as a result of investments. Thank you, sir. Sorry, I didn't get your name. But yeah, so maybe I'll say, based on a mandate, one of my colleagues made a presentation. Our mandate is basically collection, which has to do with registration, investment, and then the benefits where we pay out at the point of exit or when members face challenges as provided by the law within the term of their employment. So the investments part, the reason why the investments are there is for us to be able to give value to our member. Our value proposition for our customer, our member, is basically safety, convenience, and also empowerment. But on the part of safety is safety for it to be open for everyone. Yeah, and then the one, I think that was it. Then the parts from Moses, UNRA, thank you so much. You talked about voluntary. Yeah, voluntary is, because as opposed to mandatory where you expect to be contributing on a monthly basis, voluntary is coming from you. You know your projections, you know what you're pursuing. So basically, you can make as and when you have the money. So if you're doing business, at whichever point you have the contributions, because you have the financial plan of what you want to achieve. So there's, as I said, it's voluntary. So, but the encouragement, of course, if you're pursuing something, say you want to, I don't know, to build in 10 years, or you want to raise this amount of money by this time, I think it's a good thing for you to make sure that you have a sustainable kind of flow of income so that you can easily grow your account. Yeah, and also there's no limitation on voluntary, so there's no cap. What we've been putting right now is at least save 10,000. You can do it on a daily, you can do it on a weekly, on a monthly, whenever, which is different from what we do for mandatory under institutions. On survivors' benefit, it's survivors. So it means how do I put, our member has passed, who has done, say you have dependents, and this was the main provider. So if the member passes, then the beneficiaries come to claim. The challenge, I think, which was discussed by my colleague, is that sometimes, yes, we lack information, enough information. If, for example, all of you here who are registered with NSSF, you're up to date, you have up-to-date information, all your bio is within our database. If you're married, we have your wife or your wives. If we have your husband, we have all your children. It makes it easy when people come because you have at least where to start from. But also we have challenges where people have been in employment for the last 20 years. In our system, they are still single. Many things have changed, but nothing has changed on our end. In such circumstances, by law, of course, there are certain things that are provided to ensure that to authenticate any information that comes to us. For example, if someone passes, we expect a death certificate, we expect letters of administration, because at least someone should be taking on that estate. So we start there. However, we do verification until the ground where the ancestral home where the people were buried. A few years ago, we had tried to go digital on survivors, and we had quite a number of challenges. Why? Because we realized, as of now, someone is able to get a death certificate when they are still alive. They can get letters of administration when they are still alive. So when they will bring that documentation, and sometimes in these cases, people who are actually trying to claim they have left employment. So when you go to the employer, they tell you, this person left us a while ago when they were still alive, so we don't know anything to do with their death. So you find that when you base on just that information, you're likely to pay money to a spouse. We've had incidents, maybe I'll just shortly give you an example. We've had incidents, and they have been happening mostly, men faking death. We've not had, I don't remember having an incident of a woman. So the widow in courts comes to office and said, my husband died, left me with 10 children, we are really struggling. And they come with the letters of administration, they come with a death certificate, they come with an LC letter, then they give you contacts of relatives who don't exist or who are not relatives. Then you call and everyone says that this is there, that's my sister, that's my in-law, this person passed. Then you go on the ground, you reach the neighborhood and say, I'm looking for so-and-so. They say, no, he has just passed. So now that process becomes longer. So that's why the call was, how do we update our information to make sure that you make the work of NSSF easier so that the rightful beneficiaries get that money in time. Lastly, on that point, I can say that is the claim that takes us the longest. One of our strategies was to pay in 1 day. We found out that survivors benefit for now is not possible. We can try it with the others. So just make sure that all the information is up to date. And I think lastly, you talked about, I think what I may consider like short-term projects for employees who work for 6 months or a year. One of the things that we don't want to do is to assume that this person, the fact that this project is the only thing he'll ever do. So I know sometimes contractors tell us, we are here for a very short time, really, will it add value? But you see, NSSF is just a little contribution. One at, what I say, just collection of a number of contributions for a period of time. So you cannot limit one person and say that because we are here for just 6 months and that will be the end of it. But there are other opportunities that are going to come. Whichever the case, that money still grows and earns interest over time. When they want to claim, as I said, we have a network across the country, so they can engage us and we're able to pay them. And if you have anyone who is facing a challenge, please you let us know. Because right now we are everywhere trying to make sure that we give people opportunity to be able to claim or engage us in whichever way possible. Thank you.
Okay, we can have another round. Do you have any questions you have to respond to? Please go ahead.
Thank you, moderator. And thank you, Mr. Tim, for the inquiry or the question you did pose to us, that how come you're not seeing UNABSEC involved in enforcing social safeguards when it comes to implementation of the projects. This is a broad problem because, one, we need to first appreciate that the industry we are working in isn't regulated. And in that, we have so many contractors playing in our field, on the field of construction, but they are not known. We all attest to the fact that when you go to the database of PPDA, it has close to 1,950 plus of contractors. But when you get to the database of UNABSEC, we are slightly over 442 contractors. That means not every contractor is a member of UNABSEC. And in that, it's so hard for the association to follow up even those contractors who are not affiliated to the association. But just to bring it clear, is that we are much involved. We have a unit, a project monitoring unit at UNAPSEC that visit our project sites for our contractors, majorly to understand, are they compliant with all the requirements that have been put forward in the contracts that they did sign with our clients. And after that, we are always able to understand if someone is following up or if someone is compliant. Where we find that a contractor is not compliant, we sit them down to understand what is going on, what is making them fail to comply. And I would want to bring forward a bit of the challenges they are facing. I was late a bit when NSSF presented to us, but we've had some challenges reported by contractors in their effort to comply with the social safeguards on our project, and specifically if I was to speak into the NSSF statutory requirement. And one of the challenges we are picking from our contractors, one is the matter of delayed payments. We all know it's not news. We all know about it. Our clients are in here. Our main client, who is UNRA and a partner in this workshop, knows that there is a problem of delayed payment, and that does not leave contractors seated, because at the end of NSSF, at the side of the NSSF, there is a requirement that you have to remit by 15th. So what are contractors trying to do? They are running around to make sure that they comply, and they end up getting into commercial banks or the money lenders to make sure that they comply. That's a challenge in itself, because at the end of the day, some of them have failed to honor their obligations with the banks or the money lenders, and we've seen contractors closing shop or others failing actually to pay for their operational costs. The other challenge was brought by Brian. Brian at the back did mention about the fact that we use casual laborers. Brian mentioned a maximum of 3 to 10 days, but there are those that work on our projects for a single day. To us or the contractors who are in bridge works, you have a target of casting specific cubic meters of concrete for a bridge deck, and you know it's for 1 day. You comb around for the casual laborers in the area, use them to cast for that period, which is a single day, and that's it. They go. It becomes a challenge for the contractor to sit back and start computing the 5% and deduct it on that daily wage supposed to be given to that casual laborer, because most likely you're not going to find that person around to be engaged on your next task. So that becomes a problem. It's something we are picking through our project monitoring unit as a challenge that contractors are facing. And that same one is worsened by the fact that in areas where we operate, we are interfacing with the casual laborers. He talked about sensitization. Most of them, they don't want even to hear the word NSSF. So it becomes hard for a contractor to comply. And two, it has been a matter that has seen our operational costs or the operational costs of contractors go high, because one, we have a requirement that if I'm operating in a project area, I'm meant to use or promote local content and ensure that I use the casual laborers from that area. But contractors, when they are faced with the challenge of finding those who are conversant with NSSF, they go out of their way to get workers, casual laborers from a far distance, and that digs into their pocket. And in that, it increases their operational costs. So Moses, UNAPSEC is there in enforcing compliance, but there are challenges that contractors are facing. There are challenges that the association is facing, the fact that not every contractor in the construction space is a member of UNAPSEC. Thank you.
Thank you. That is from the contractor's perspective. So this is more of a plenary. I would have loved to engage you on a one-on-one, but Since it's plenary, we give the opportunity to the audience and those who are not with us to send in their questions. So now can we have another round? The roving mic is out there. Please raise your hand and ask your question.
Thank you. My name is Engineer Alfred Ogik. I'm Head of Road Development in UNRA. This goes to NSSF. Is it possible to involve members in direct investment of the fund? I mean, is your other investment portfolio, instead of waiting to attain time for accessibility. For example, if we have investment opportunity, for example, in purchase of chairs, treasury bills, which have no management challenge at all. So that by the time a member attains accessibility, say 50 years or 55 years, the funds will have been growing amid your other investment portfolio. I think that would be a very prudent idea, that you involve members. Because when somebody waits until he attains the age of 55, he may not be that active to come up and begin to invest. He might simply spend the money. Why don't we partner together with the members during the period of contribution, so that there are certain investment portfolio that the fund, that NSSF directly engages in, but the others where you give opportunity for the members to invest directly. Buying of chairs, treasury bill, this one does not require any management challenges, because that would be one of the areas that you would say would be very difficult for the funds to engage in. So, and then you talked of voluntary membership and voluntary contribution. How would the compliance be? Won't it be very difficult to, if there's a default? And also informal sectors, because I say as part of the amendment in the Act, you have introduced the informal sectors. So maybe you can give us highlight how you are prepared to trace compliance within the informal sectors. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sandra, and I've got 2 points that I wanted to kind of point to. I wanted to thank NSSF for the information that you've provided. I think it was quite knowledgeable. The only thing that was missing for me as a people person was information regarding contributions from an employer point and an employee. I don't think that was quite clear without having to go online. My question, say I opted into the pension fund and I've worked for 12 months, do I have the option to opt out, or would I have to wait to the age of 55 to get access to that pot? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am called Arthur Mijumbi. I work with UNRA under bridges and structures. This goes to NSSF. We can see you're actually getting a lot of money from the non-compliances. You are slapping fines of up to 20%, but you're getting these fines from the people or the server.
I do not have a comment on the issues raised.
Okay.
Thank you so much. She talked about the challenge of costs that arise because of contractors having to go out of the environment where they're working, to get casual laborers to come and work. Alfred, UNRA, you asked a question about partnering with our members as far as investments are concerned. I hope I got the name right. I believe that soil security, as stated earlier and explained by the law, we have certain provisions within which we work. As you know that as NSSF, the law requires us to take mandatory 5% from the member and 10% from the employer. So the focus is majorly there. However, with the amended law, we know that quite a number of projects are coming up. We also have an area of voluntary, and I think the part of voluntary is where actually you partner with the fund, because that means you're bringing in over and above your mandatory and that which will be able to save. But we don't have provisions, or else there will be almost being run like a bank. However, we are coming up with an initiative which we are calling Smart Life, where members will be able to save for specific periods for certain projects, say a year or 2 years or 5 years or whichever the case. Now that would be a little bit different from what we are doing in mandatory. So when the regulations are fully out, I think we are going to be able to publicize it all over and everywhere, and then that's how you can come in and you'll see the results of that. The other part was on the compliance side of voluntary. As I mentioned earlier, it's voluntary. So our push in education is to make sure that we create, a willingness to save, and I think that it was kind of hinted on by our managing director, but also to create avenues of how people are able to make money to be able to save. So we are trying to make sure that beyond mandatory, when you understand the purpose of saving, then you be the one actually pushing to make sure that you save as much as you can, having laid out all the benefits that come with the saving. So on that part of the compliance from voluntary perspective is to be able to give you initiatives that will motivate you to make sure that you periodically make sure that you have an investment coming in from your end, contributions coming in. We have two categories in there. We have the top-up for people who are still in employment under corporate bodies or whichever the case, where you can top up beyond your 5%. So when that area opens up, it means that you can actually work with your employer and you save beyond 5%. So you can choose on your side contribution, instead of deducting 5, the employer deducts maybe 10 or 15%. So that will be the top up. But then we have the other category of employers, of members who are purely not in the formal sector, or are not in the formal sector, are not employed but running their own businesses. So I'd mentioned that earlier. So that is a category of its own. Then the other thing maybe I can touch on is the fact that a threshold was dropped. Earlier, employers had to have 5 or more to be eligible to mandatorily to contribute to their members. But now, as long as you have 1 or more, so it means that cap is not there. Now, those follow the mandatory chain of command, just as stated. That's what the laws that were shared here partly are covering. So I think that addresses that. On the part of can I opt out, the lady asked here, thank you so much. In the presentation from my colleague earlier was stating the laws that are provided on the benefits that are given. So there's a qualification criteria. So maybe to just go through briefly what she stated, there's age benefit, which is paid to members who are 55 or above, regardless of whether they are in employment or out of employment. Then you have 50 years. If you're out of employment, what we call withdrawal benefit. It means that if I'm 50 and above, and I've been out of employment for at least a year, I can come and claim. However, there's also under age benefit. If someone ceases to be employed at that point in time, they can also, at 50, they can come and claim without having to wait for the year gap. So the provisions are there within the law. Then there's exempted employment. If someone gets employed with an institution that already has a recognized pension scheme. In the country, we have the government pension scheme, so people who join and become civil servants or that category of staff or employees, they can come and claim their NSSF because they are already covered, meaning that when they leave employment, they will have pension to cover. And then we have immigration grant. If someone is relocating to another country, that is for a local, a national, permanent residence or the like. Then also we have the members, the expatriates who have been working and they choose to return because they are also mandated to contribute. So that is there. And then the other one they talked about was invalidity benefit, which is to members who are incapacitated or unable to continue in gainful employment. The law says either mentally or physically incapacitated. So there we usually try to define that we're not talking about sickness, we're just talking about incapacitation. Yeah. So those are the available avenues. And then the last one, which came with the amendments, is the midterm access, which is if you're 45. And I think I will still use that to answer, I think, a question that was asked by Madame Kansime. The 10-year is on midterm access. If you have been working for at least 10 years, you have contributions for the last 10 years or more, which is basically 120 contributions, and you're 45 years of age, so you can take your 20%. If you're disabled, you can take 40%. So the idea of the 10 years, you're looking at the time within which you've been contributing. So there's that cap. So that does not apply to the rest of the other contributions. The other contribution, you take either your full, or you can choose to take a drawdown for age benefit, withdraw benefit. So you can take your lump sum, or you can choose to take just part of it and come for the other later. Then, Arthur, you asked about, a lot of money that comes as a result of arrears. The contributions, one, when we audit an institution who has not been compliant, and I would like to say that that's the last part. We go through a lot of dialogue to make sure, because our model is majorly focusing on relationship management. We don't find you today and you've not contributed, and straight away we are auditing you so that you can. We usually allow you to do a self-assessment, look into your books and tell us where the gaps are and be able to make the necessary payments. Where there is failure or you're having quite a number of challenges, we come in and do an audit, carry out an audit, then come up with the contribution that you should have paid to the member. That contribution is 15% at that point in time. That's why my colleague, Madame Bukenya, mentioned and said that you end up paying more. Because if you're not paying for a member right now, that means you're not deducting also their 5%. They're taking their entire 100% salary. So when an audit is carried out, you're also required to pay the 5% that should have deducted from them. And you're not going to get it from their current salary. So you're paying the entire 15%. That goes to the member. The second requirement is that you pay for the interest for that period. So there's no loss. So when you're paying that contribution, you're also paying for the interest they have missed. So assuming we declared interest last year, 10%, and then you are not able to make contributions for that member, you'll also pay 10% equivalent. I hope that is clear. Then the other is a fine that's provided for in the law. That's the penalty, which penalty comes as a result of failure. So that penalty, I think that's the one you're asking, which should be shared amongst the number. That's a fine, like any other fine that the government levies on anyone who is not compliant or fails to abide by the law. So that is not shared out. It's not shared out in the fund. I hope that's clear. And then the last item, I think, from James was to do with a minimum threshold to enroll. I should say, fortunately, there's no minimum threshold. Why? Because whatever amount that you're earning, cumulatively, you're going to make a lot more in the future. Some of us did not start earning what we are earning right now. So if you're earning 100,000 today, tomorrow it will increase, but you know what is taken out is a percentage. If it was a standard figure, that means that if we say you're going to contribute 50,000, regardless of whether you're earning 50,000, that would be very unfair. It's a percentage. So if it's 100,000, that means 5,000 is what is getting off your account. But more so, the member is gaining because the employer is adding 10%. So if you deprive the member of the 5%, which contributions comes from them, you're depriving double that is meant to come from the employer. So they are more at a loss. So better, whether they're earning 50 or 100, let them contribute. Eventually, that will add value to them when the time comes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Representing the contractors, are you convinced or you want to ask more questions? And why?
To give from NSSF when it comes to the NSSF remittance by the providers on behalf of the employees. Can we speak in that direction? Thank you.
Yeah, I think I will not wait for the second round, so you can respond to this straight away.
Okay, about late payments, I think the major challenge that we get usually is communication. We've had institutions that come, I'll give an example. When we went through the COVID time, the challenge was visible, we all knew, but also still it required institutions to come, write to NSSF, come, let's sit on a table, and table the challenges. As contractors, I know that you work with other stakeholders for funding. So if any institution is having challenges, come to office, let us know, let's discuss. We've had institutions that have to make payment plans, yeah, because they're facing a few challenges here and there, which of course they're expected to honor with the time. So let there be engagement. We don't just come to you and say, regardless of what is happening. And that's why I tell people that if our focus is social security, even closing a business does not add value, because if we close you, now we make it worse, because even the one who has been earning, the little they are earning also ceases to be. Then there we are not contributing to the wellness of the member. So ours is dialogue first. That's why I said we have a policy that we follow. Majorly in part of our work is customer relationships. We do a little bit of engagement, understand dialogues and the like. When we fail, that's when now we get into the law and all the other things. So let's just have, discussion.
Okay. Maybe what they want is once it is declared a national catastrophe, it is automatic that you guys freeze the demands. Okay, I would like to see by show of hands those who still have some questions or clarifications or comments. By show of hands, because I want to manage time. There's one. Yeah? Okay, let's have this. I think they're not too many. Let's have these come through.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Imran Katabara, UNRA. My question was a two-part question. It had to do with the industrial courts as well as the labor officers that are supposed to be in the districts. To my last check, and I apologize in advance if I'm late on the information, but the industrial court currently has only 2 judges dealing with about 2,600 cases. Every district, I understand, is mandated to have a labor officer, but currently, right now, at least in my experience, there are many districts right now that are very understaffed with no labor officers in some places. The reason I ask is because UNRA, which is, in our work, we deal with a lot of stakeholders in which a labor officer would play a very huge interventionary role in terms of dealing with many labor disputes that arise on a district level. Because as a recent study showed, 67% of all labor contracts in this country are all oral agreements. Only 33% of Ugandans actually have written contracts. So I guess my question is, are there any plans to expand the industrial courts, as well as in terms of putting more appointees? And in addition to that, are there any plans in the budget in the future to deal with labor officers on ground? Because in my view, this would greatly help UNRWA stakeholders as well as UNRWA itself if a lot of these issues could be mediated on the ground before they enter into courts. So I was wondering if there are any plans on making any upcoming changes on that. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we've exhausted this. And I really have, there's one more? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharif Muhindo. I'm from Terrain Services, where I work as Human Resource Manager. I've had scenarios of employees who have been serving, say, with NSSF for the last maybe 13 years. But they've had periods of inactivity where maybe say he served for 2 years and he spent maybe say 6 or 8 years without serving because he did not have a job. And then he gets another job and he serves for another 3 years or something like that. And at the end of the day, he needs to access his 20%, but does not really understand whether this period of inactivity counts to the 10 years that he should have actually served for him to be eligible for that 20%. Please make a clarification on that one.
Thank you very much. I'm called Chiza Stephen. I work with the Uganda National Roads Authority. Mine is a concern that we find in the field, and it will go directly to NSSF. These days, people can start, or they can get formal employment at the age of about, let us say 24. They will work for about 10 years. That will be around 34 years. And you may find that this gentleman has contributed close to maybe 50 million. And you want to get a plot at that age and at least improve on his way of living. But now the other cap will be he has to first make 45 years or he makes 60 years. And you find that actually he has the money with NSSF, he has a pressing need, but he cannot get out of that challenge because the factor is the age and not how much he has contributed. So their request is, if possible, as we are putting a cap on the age, is it also possible to put a cap on the amount, and we say if somebody contributes maybe 40 million and he has a pressing need of 10 million, can NSSF come in and assist and bail him out? Because I think the economy needs bailouts as more than before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Charles Kalinachi. I'm also from the field. I work with Uganda National Roads Authority. Mine will go to UNRWA. I hope I'm not shooting myself. On the side of contractors, I'm a resident engineer, and partly I want to see progress of work. So my question is, where shall we put that balance between progressing the works and complying with these remittances. Of course, UNABSEC has already raised it. It's common ground that there are delayed payments and people are struggling. There are contractors who when paid, they can only go for 1 month and then they suspend again. And this is happening, and I cannot be cagey about it. So we find it hard to push these people to comply, and yet we also want progress. We want something to commission after 2 years or 3, if extended, but they don't have money. The suppliers of materials are demanding them. Suppliers of fuel are on their necks. The interest on delayed payments we are giving them is not a substantial remedy to the delay. So they get all in this quagmire. They are caught up. They quoted badly. The jobs are taking long to execute. We planned for 2 years, it's taking 4 years. Price escalation is hitting them. So at the end of the day, we who are supposed to supervise them, we are also trapped with them. Because if you're coming to the law, you must come with clean hands. We are not clean. We are pushing them to comply. So these are the challenges that are in the field. And we cannot pretend. I cannot say, no, it's not happening. It's happening. So maybe to NSSF and probably us also who are trying to enforce this compliance as part of UNRA, we need to look into it. Thank you.
Okay. There are 2 questions that have come in from our online, streaming from online, which I would like to pass on to. First one is NSSF. I think so is the second one. Ivan Musisi, NSSF, listen carefully. Are there any technological solutions or tools available to help contractors streamline their NSSF compliance processes? Second one is Olega Simon. Are there any training programs or resources available for contractors to better understand and implement NSSF requirements? This is from the live stream. That's in addition to all the questions. So I think now is a chance to give everyone a chance to either respond or give your last word. We'll start from the ministry.
Thank you, moderator. I'd like to respond to Mr. Katabara from UNRA. And yes, you're right on the 2 judges. However, the industrial court is a court of reference, if you may know. And those 2 judges work together with panelists. And the industrial court also has circuits that move around the country. And there's already a plan underway to begin operations in the eastern and northern region. Then for the labor officers, currently we have about 222 labor officers. I have also added the ones at the ministry. And where there is no labor officer, substantive labor officer, there's an acting labor officer. So every district has to have one because this is the court of first instance in every district. I think that is it. And I would like to thank you all for coming.
Okay, and that you have a takeaway today. So we'll move to UNRA. You have any response?
Okay, thank
Where
you very
you feel you want to refer to anyone within UNRA, you have so many. There's a lot of backup, so don't take the world on your shoulder.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator.
Everybody here to support you, all right?
I would like to respond to Mr. Kalinaki's question about balancing between compliance and works, delivering the works. One, NSSF has already assured us that we can have discussions with them and get payment plans and have payment plans. So my advice is, let's engage, let the contractor engage with NSSF, and we have payment plans for those periods where we are sure that the cash flows are not coming in as expected. And then I also have a question I was never given a chance to ask. Yes, as someone responsible for ensuring that our contractors comply, we find challenges with enforcing verbal contracts. And today in your presentation, Madam, you still emphasize that verbal contracts are valid. So if a worker is hired along the way and they come on the job and they are not paid or they get an issue and it needs to be addressed, and we do not have any written documentation, how do we enforce such a contract? Do we have regulations in place that can help us to address this gap? Because in our work, it is a big gap. And you know, the contractors will say, if verbal is also a contract as good as the written. So we need help in that area. Thank you.
Okay, any last word from UNRA?
The last word is to thank everybody for the active participation, and especially NSSF for this engagement and partnership. And I believe that we shall go a long way in ensuring that our workers have better working conditions. Thank you.
Okay, I think in a special way I'll end with the NSSF, so I'll jump to UNAPSEC.
Once again, thank you, moderator. Mine is to thank NSSF and UNRA for coming up with such kind of workshop. We all know that these are platforms that we all desire because they give us a chance to air out our experiences and the challenges we are facing in the line of our businesses. We all know we may not get the solutions to all the challenges that we air out when we come here, but we know it's a good entry point. So thank you so much, UNRA and NSSF.
Thank you, UNAPSEC. Over to you, NSSF. You respond and give us your last word.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a question, I think, from...
assurance.
Mr. Sharif, about members that have been saving. Let me see that, just a minute. Yes, talking about people who have inactive periods. I would say that when you look at their statement, there are gaps. So when we are considering midterm, we don't concentrate, we don't actually look at the gaps within the time you have worked. We look at the contribution that you have made. So regardless of how many gaps that you've made, but if you calculate your contributions, they make up 10 years, as guided by the law, we pay you. So the gaps shouldn't be a hindrance. I hope that answers. Then I think Mr. Chiza, you asked about a 24-year-old who's worked for 10 years. Now he's 34, he has needs at this point in time, but he has no access. So right now, as provided for, what we have is exactly where our limitations are for now. But you see there've been quite a number of changes, and we're coming up with a number of products. The amendments, maybe the assurance, Mr. Moderator, as you guided, is that we are opening doors to new products. So hopefully we'll find ways that we can be able to assist them. But I'll still point to voluntary. That's where we are trying to push for people to be able to make savings for short-term access. That's the best way that we can be able to help members. Maybe something else that I didn't mention is that we are doing a lot of financial literacy in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. And I think we need some of the institutions, I don't know if we've done in UNRA, but we've been doing it for quite a number of institutions. to be able to understand, because our purpose is to making savings a way of life, beyond NSSF, because NSSF only draws 5% from your salary. So want to see, okay, beyond tax, what happens to the 60 or 65%? So how can we have these discussions so that we can be able to have certain things that cushion us from, incidents that will come that we are not prepared for? Because if we draw out everything that we have right now in NSSF, age is assured. Every year we celebrate a birthday. Age is assured. Some of us who are older now, it makes more sense. Some of us who are young, you look fun and you wonder, will I ever reach there? Yeah, so we have to make sure that, your old age is taken care of. Our managing director, NSSF, mentioned and looked at the life expectancy right now. If you cease to work at 55 right now, if you die at 75, let me put it even closer. How many more years are those? You've been earning a salary, you've been getting all the benefits that come with the institution, then it stops at 55. You have another 20 years to live with no earning. So if you draw out everything that you have right now, what is going to happen in those next 20 years? I'd like to mention that some of the issues that we are having in terms of when you talk about poverty is just because it's a cycle. We spend everything right now and spend it all, some of it on our children. When our children start to work, what happens? We have the expectation that children are going to take care of us. So they're trying to balance taking care of us and also making a life and taking care of their own, and it becomes a cycle. So we want to see how do we change that. So that's why NSSF is there to address some of those needs, but I believe that the need is bigger. And through these engagements, I think we'll come up with quite a number of other options that we can consider in future. Otherwise, I'd like to say thank you so much. UNRA, we appreciate this partnership. We believe that as we have engaged right now and had these discussions, we're going to see how we work with the contractors and all the other partners to be able to address their needs and make sure that our members are protected for the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for all for coming. Have a great day.
Another round of applause for our panelists, a strong one. I really have to thank you so much, the four of you from all the respective institutions. Thank you so much for taking your time to respond to all the concerns and questions. You may now go take your places. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the NSSF gentleman they brought is a very calm and collected person. But if anyone was observing and listening, compliance is one thing that is not changing. So we don't want to get in the situation of IFRIS. Let us comply as quickly as possible, understand this thing, what it means to all of us in our respective work, the project managers, UNRA, the contractors, and we don't want to end up in State House having to explain ourselves and asking for concessions here and there. So I think it's a good thing that we started with this sensitization so that come July, next financial year, we are on good footing. We now also know who to call in case we have a problem. He said we should call them anytime. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of this today, and I would like to ask our acting executive director, UNRA, to come and give us the closing remarks. While he's on his way, I would like to make a very important announcement because once he speaks, I may not get a chance to come back here and to say anything. Lunch coupons have been handed over. They're over there to your team. And then lunch is in Kazinga Restaurant. They take the stairs below the reception. Same building, you'll find a place, Kazinga Restaurant. The place is Kazinga Restaurant. Don't get lost and don't leave the lunch. It was paid for and it has to be accounted for. Mr. Moses Kasacha is our Director, Internal Audit. He's standing in for the Executive Director. He's going to give us a few remarks and then we'll close the day. There's a good reason why I chose him. He's also, when you hear internal audit, he's way up there. I think some of you have been following what has been happening in the audit world and accounting. He's a president. Are you still a president? Yes, he's the top guy up there. So with respect to governance and compliance, he's the right man to give us his closing remarks on this occasion. Thank you so much. Please.
Thank you so much, Charles. Not to be on record, but yesterday I extended my term. As president, I found a reason to extend it. Such that I work within compliance requirements, not outside. Anyway, that aside, I would like really to appreciate each one of you. First, the MD, even in his absentia, Michael, the MD of NSSF, for honoring this invitation because it was really required. But also in a very special way, the partners in this journey of compliance, especially from the Ministry of Gender, and certainly from the, you didn't want us to call you regulator, or you meant regulator elsewhere. But UNABSEC, we appreciate. And also in a very special way, our partners without whom we may not contribute to the nation the way we are doing now, the contractors. We appreciate all of you. And I must also tell you, for being here, it is Friday, people are rushing to Namugongo, people are worried of jam, but staying with us up to this time, we appreciate you. And also I would like to appreciate the organizers under the able leadership of Charles and your team. We appreciate you. And my colleagues from UNRA. Those of you who might have come early, I think you came a little later. The executive director of UNRA was here. She had a bit of a cold, and so she had to go back for many reasons. Again, compliance reasons on health matters. But that was okay, otherwise how would I have stood here? So all things work for good. Having said that, we are talking about compliance. What Charles was fearing to tell you, internally we push, this is for NSSF in particular, internally and maybe gender, we push our own people to comply. And we have the challenges, especially when it comes to casuals. But one thing again I would like to appreciate was the attitude, at least from those who spoke. There was a gentleman behind there, I think he operates in the north. And his was not to say it's a difficult thing, but to say, I need help. I think that's the way to go. And there was also another one from UNRA. I think you need to meet that gentleman, he's a contractor from the north, to understand what it takes, not to complain, but to look for solutions of how to address those matters. And that's the way to go. But I would like to re-echo what the lady from NSSF said. And if everything I say you don't pick, at least pick this one. That compliance might be less costly than non-compliance. You might want to cut corners thinking it's what will expand the bottom line, but that might be more costly than compliance itself. I'm not going to talk about the penalties because those I know. But at UNRA, we would like to up the game of performance rating of our contractors. And compliance is one of the factors that we shall be looking at. So it might even cost you your continuous working with us if you are found wanting at all times. But having said that, it's actually the staff who help us produce, who help us at the end of the day make money. And for those of us in government who help us actually deliver services. So it's just fair, besides the compliance, the regulatory requirement or the legal requirement, it's just fair and moral that we actually look at the future of our staff, many of whom, for your information, don't even know. And I'm going to end with my own experience. When I started working, my first employer, not the first, the second employer, who actually tripled my salary, if you compare with my first employer, came and sold an idea which sounded very good. He said, you see, we shall give you this much. For illustration purposes, let's assume they will give me 5 million. And then he said, but you see, we shall give you an agreement of 1/3 of that money. And I was like, why? Then he went on to say, you see, if we put the whole money, you will lose out on pay and on NSSF. Because for us on NSSF at that time, we thought it was also a tax because it's not entering in my pocket. What I wanted was what goes in my pocket. But like my ED said this morning, and even the MD of NSSF, I now understand. Those of you who are very far, my hair is not completely black. But I now understand that it is very, very important to have savings with NSSF or with any other arrangement. Now, for those of you who are here and you are employers, the young people don't even understand that. Help them, they will thank you later. With those few words, I now take the pleasure to bring this workshop to the end. It's now closed. Thank you very much.